My husband asked me to store a box in my closet. I accidentally opened it while he was on a business trip and ended up calling the police. The night before Mark left for his business trip, he handed me a box and asked me to keep it in my closet. "Just don't open it," he said with a playful smile, and I trusted him completely. We had been married for 4 years, and in those years, Mark had always been the kind of person who didn't hide anything from me. He was dependable, steady, and trustworthy. This was one of those moments when I didn't question him. I simply agreed. "Just don't open it," I repeated, raising an eyebrow. "Why not?" A mischievous smile spread across his face, the kind that made his eyes crinkle at the corners. It was the smile I had fallen in love with all those years ago. "If I told you, it wouldn't be a surprise." "A surprise?" I frowned slightly, unsure. "But it's not my birthday or anything. Trust me, Regina," he said softly, as he handed the box to me. "Just keep it safe until I get back from Chicago, please." I nodded, still a little confused but not worried. "You know this is going to drive me insane, right? Keeping a mystery box for 3 days?" He laughed, leaning over to kiss my forehead. 3 days. You can manage 3 days." As he turned to leave for the bedroom to pack his things, I settled onto the couch with the box in my lap. The mystery of it was already starting to eat away at me. I gave it a gentle shake near my ear. It didn't make much noise, so it was probably lightweight. I knew that if I didn't keep my promise, I'd regret it. Still, my curiosity burned like fire, and all I could think about was what could be inside that box. The next few days passed slowly. I kept the box hidden in my closet, trying my best to resist the urge to open it. But day 2 of Mark's business trip, as I was reorganizing my side of the closet, disaster struck. I had reached up to grab something from the shelf when my elbow brushed against the box. It had been placed precariously near the edge, and as I turned, I felt it topple. "Shit!" I muttered under my breath, lunging forward in a futile attempt to catch it. But it was too late. The box fell to the floor with a soft thud, the cardboard flaps popping open just slightly from the impact. I froze, staring at the small opening in the box, heart racing. The curiosity that had been building up over the past 2 days surged to the forefront of my mind. I crouched down, the sound of the box hitting the floor still ringing in my ears. My hand hovered over it for a moment, but my thoughts were already spiraling. What if I just took a quick peek, just a tiny glimpse, and then I'd close it again and pretend nothing happened? But even as I thought about it, I knew that was a terrible idea. Mark had been so specific. "Don't open it." And I trusted him, didn't I? I hesitated, the need to respect his wishes warring with the gnawing desire to know what was inside. It wasn't just curiosity anymore. It felt like an obsession. What had he wanted to keep from me so badly? Slowly, I crouched down and reached for the box. The cardboard felt thinner than I had expected, almost fragile. With trembling hands, I peeled back the flap just a little more. The contents were partially obscured, but what I could see was enough to send a cold shiver down my spine. Inside, the box were small, neatly arranged bundles wrapped in plastic. They looked like money, a lot of money. My breath caught in my throat and my heart thudded painfully in my chest. My mind raced, trying to make sense of it. Why was there so much cash in our closet? Why hadn't Mark told me about it? I quickly slammed the box shut and stepped back, my mind spinning. My hands were clammy and a sense of dread settled in my stomach. I wanted to scream, to shout at Mark when he got home. What had I just discovered? Why was he keeping this from me? I couldn't sit with it any longer. My fingers fumbled for my phone, and in a daze, I dialed 911. I couldn't believe what I was about to do, but I couldn't make sense of it on my own. Something wasn't right, and I had to find out what it was. As I waited for the police to arrive, my thoughts raced. How had I not seen the signs before? Mark had always been the perfect husband, loving, attentive, kind, but this wasn't just a surprise. This felt like a betrayal. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something far darker happening, something I hadn't been able to see until now. The minutes felt like hours, and by the time the police arrived, I was a nervous wreck. My heart pounded in my chest as I led them to the closet where the box now lay, still unopened in my hands. I had done what I thought was the right thing, but now I was filled with regret. How had it come to this? How had everything I thought I knew about my marriage, my life, suddenly unraveled in the blink of an eye? And then, in the quiet chaos of it all, I heard my husband's voice on the phone. His voice, calm and distant, sent a wave of nausea through me. What had he done? And what had I just uncovered? I had promised Mark that I wouldn't open the box, but as I stood there, looking at it, something inside me shifted. I hadn't opened it on purpose, right? It had just fallen, and now I had to know what was inside. This isn't snooping, I muttered to myself, my voice barely above a whisper. This is damage control. My hands were shaking as I carefully peeled back the flap of the box. As I did, something inside caught the light from the dim bulb above. There was a sparkle, bright and captivating, that pulled me in like a magnet. I froze. The object nestled inside a soft black velvet lining was unlike anything I had ever seen before. The light glinted off the diamonds, and I could hardly believe my eyes. It was a diamond necklace, huge, extravagant, and stunning. The centerpiece was a massive teardrop-shaped diamond, surrounded by smaller stones arranged in an intricate, almost magical pattern. The brilliance of it was blinding, as though the necklace itself was alive with energy. "What the hell?" I whispered, unable to comprehend what I was seeing. I carefully picked it up, feeling its weight in my hands. It was real, I could tell. It wasn't some cheap knockoff or a gift you'd pick up at a department store. This was high-end, a piece of jewelry that would belong in a vault, guarded by security. I could barely fathom it. Mark and I shared everything. We had a joint bank account, and every big purchase, anything over $200, was always discussed. Just last month, he spent 3 weeks researching the best lawnmower before making the purchase. We were careful with our money. We lived a modest life, and this was something entirely out of our league. There was no way we could afford a necklace like this. I could feel my heart racing in my chest. My mind spun with questions, each more terrifying than the last. I set the necklace down carefully in the box and continued to dig through it. My fingers brushed against something else, an envelope. Inside it were several receipts, and what looked like an invoice with the name Harper printed clearly at the top. My stomach flipped. Harper? Who was that? I pulled back, sitting back on my heels as the pieces began to fall together. The necklace, the invoice, the name Harper. My head spun with possibilities. Was Mark in debt? Was he involved in something illegal? Had he bought this with money we didn't have? Was the jewelry stolen? And Harper? Who the hell was Harper? I stood up, pacing the room, unable to shake the questions swirling in my mind. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think straight. Was he cheating on me? I wanted to believe that this was all a misunderstanding, that there was some rational explanation. But deep down, I knew that this was something far worse than I ever expected. I glanced at the phone in my hand. I tried calling Mark several times, but each time it went straight to voicemail. He had mentioned that he would be in meetings all day, but this didn't feel right. Not at all. My hands were trembling as I left him a message, trying to keep my voice steady despite the panic building inside me. "Hey, it's me," I said, my voice a little shaky. "I need you to call me as soon as you can. It's important. Really important, Mark." But after leaving the message, I couldn't shake the feeling of dread. I tried calling again, 3 more times, but each call went unanswered. The silence only made my fear grow. I knew I couldn't just sit around and wait for Mark to call me back. If this necklace was stolen or involved in something illegal, I couldn't keep it in my house. I didn't know what to do, but I knew I couldn't pretend it didn't exist. It was too much, too dangerous. With a sudden rush of urgency, I grabbed my phone and dialed the non-emergency police line. I could feel my pulse pounding in my ears as I waited for someone to pick up. When the dispatcher finally answered, I didn't know what to say at first. It felt surreal, but I had to do it. "I need to report a suspicious item," I said, trying to keep my voice calm but failing. I think it might be stolen." I could hear my own voice trembling, and I hated how weak I sounded. But this was no time to worry about that. I needed answers, and I needed them fast. The dispatcher asked a few questions to gather more details, and then, just minutes later, I saw the flashing lights of a police cruiser pull up outside my house. My heart skipped a beat. I didn't know what would happen next, but I had taken the first step. The officers arrived shortly after, both of them professional and kind, even though I could tell they knew something was off. Officers Chen and Rodriguez introduced themselves as they stepped into the house. They asked to see the box, and I led them to the closet where it was sitting. I didn't know what to expect, but I felt an overwhelming sense of relief as I handed over the necklace. The whole situation felt like a bad dream, and I had no idea how it would unfold. As I explained everything to the officers, I couldn't stop thinking about Mark. Where was he? What had he been hiding from me? And Harper? Who was she? And how did she fit into all of this? For the first time in our marriage, I realized I didn't know my husband as well as I thought, and that scared me more than anything. I didn't have answers yet, but I knew one thing for sure. My life had just been turned upside down, and I had no idea what was coming next. The kitchen felt unnaturally quiet as Officers Chen and Rodriguez sat across from me, the box placed between us like an unwanted guest. I could feel my pulse quickening, my hands clammy as I tried to hold it together. The officers were focused on the box, carefully examining it, their gloved hands moving slowly over the velvet lining and the necklace inside. "Your husband gave you no indication of what was inside?" Officer Chen asked, his voice calm but probing. He was holding the necklace up to the light, inspecting it closely, as if every facet might reveal some clue I had missed. His voice broke through my thoughts, and I shook my head slowly. "No," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "He just said it was a surprise. We don't keep secrets like this. We can't afford something like this. Not even close." He didn't explain anything. I wrapped my arms around myself, trying to keep my nerves in check. The officers exchanged glances before Rodriguez spoke up. "And the name on the paperwork doesn't match your family's either?" she asked, her voice gentle but firm. I nodded, the knot in my stomach tightening. "It says Harper. I don't know any Harpers. And the paperwork, the receipts, they looked like they had nothing to do with us. It didn't make sense." The two officers exchanged another glance, their expressions serious now. I could feel the tension growing between us, the weight of the situation settling into my bones. "Ma'am," Officer Chen said, his voice soft but firm, "I think you did the right thing by calling us. Given the apparent value of the necklace, we'll need to take it in for verification. We'll need to make sure it's not stolen." "Am I overreacting?" I asked, suddenly feeling unsure of myself. The doubt crept in like an unwelcome guest. What if I was making a huge mistake? What if there was a perfectly reasonable explanation for all of this? What if I'd just reported my husband to the police for no reason? Rodriguez gave me a reassuring smile. her eyes soft with empathy. "Better safe than sorry," she said. "If everything checks out, we'll return the item promptly." I nodded, still feeling a swirl of uncertainty in my chest, but I knew I had done what I felt was right. The officers packed up the box and took it with them, and as they left, I felt the weight of the situation lift slightly, but only enough to let me breathe a little easier. My head was still spinning, and I was left alone with my thoughts. I took out my phone and sent Mark a quick text. "Call me as soon as you land. It's important." The hours that followed felt like an eternity. The house was eerily quiet, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound in the background. I tried to focus on something, anything, but every worst-case scenario played over and over in my mind like a bad movie. Had I missed signs that Mark was in trouble? Was our whole marriage built on secrets I didn't know about? Was he hiding things from me? I tried not to think about it, but my thoughts kept spiraling. What if he's been lying to me this whole time? What if I've been living in some fantasy world, thinking everything was okay? Finally, just as the sun began to set, my phone lit up. It was Mark calling. My heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my throat. I hesitated for just a second before answering, the anticipation almost unbearable. "Hey, got your messages," Mark's voice said through the phone, casual and cheerful. "What's going on? Everything okay?" I took a deep breath, steadying myself before I spoke. "I opened the box, Mark." I could feel the tension building in the pit of my stomach. There was a pause on the other end of the line. The sound of Mark shifting in his seat was the only thing I could hear. Then, something completely unexpected happened. He burst out laughing. It started as a low chuckle, but it grew louder, and before I knew it, he was practically wheezing, the sound filling my ear. You called the police?" he gasped between laughs. "On a fake prop necklace from the internet?" I blinked, confused and speechless. "A what?" Mark's laughter continued, only slightly subsiding. "Oh my God, Regina, it's fake. Completely fake. I got it for $29.99 on Etsy." I sat there, completely stunned, unable to process what he was saying. "I don't understand. Why do you have a fake diamond necklace? And who's Harper?" Mark's laughter finally started to fade, turning into occasional chuckles. "Remember that community theater group I've been helping with? The fall production? The murder mystery?" I felt my mind slowly catching up, but I was still in a fog. "Yeah, I remember. You've been helping them with props and stuff." "Well," he said, sounding more serious now, "they needed props for this big scene where the family heirloom gets stolen. So I ordered this necklace online for the part. It's all for the play, Regina, I swear." I let his words sink in, and slowly, the absurdity of the situation began to dawn on me. The prop necklace, the receipts, the name Harper, it was all part of the theater production. I felt a mixture of relief and embarrassment wash over me. My mind had raced to conclusions far beyond what was necessary. I had called the police, my mind spinning with all the worst possibilities, only to find out that it was all just a misunderstanding. But Mark wasn't done yet. "You know," he said, sounding almost amused, "if you had just asked me, I would have told you what it was for. Instead, you went ahead and made it a full-blown crime scene investigation." I could hear the smile in his voice, and for a moment, I wanted to laugh too. But instead, I just sat there, still a little stunned by how quickly my life had turned into a police investigation over a fake necklace. "I'm sorry," I said, finally finding my voice. I didn't know. I thought it was real. And I didn't know who Harper was." Mark chuckled again. "I'm glad you called me now, though, instead of getting yourself all worked up before I came home. I'll explain everything when I get back, okay?" "Yeah," I said, finally managing a laugh. "I guess I really overreacted, didn't I?" Mark's voice softened. "Better safe than sorry, right?" I smiled, feeling the tension leave my body. The necklace, the name Harper, the police. It had all been a misunderstanding. A big, embarrassing misunderstanding, but a misunderstanding. Nonetheless, at least now I had my answers, and Mark would be home soon to explain the rest. I sank into the bed, still trying to wrap my mind around everything Mark had just told me. My heart was racing, a mixture of relief and embarrassment flooding me all at once. "So the necklace is..." I trailed off, my voice still a little shaky. Mark chuckled softly from where he was leaning against the doorframe. "Fake and glitter glue," he finished for me, his voice light and teasing. "Gloriously tacky up close, but stage perfect from a distance. You know, the kind of thing that looks amazing under the spotlight, but is totally ridiculous if you get too close." I sat there staring at the floor for a moment, my hands still trembling slightly as I tried to absorb it all. "And I called the police on a theater prop?" I whispered, feeling the weight of my actions sink in. Mortification washed over me as the realization fully set in. I had been so convinced that there was something shady going on that I didn't even stop to think. Mark's laughter softened, his tone turning more comforting. "Don't feel bad, Reggie. Honestly, from what you described, you did what anyone would do after finding something that looked like crown jewels hidden in their closet. I would have freaked out too." I sighed, my face burning with embarrassment. "The officers took it for verification," I muttered, still reeling from the absurdity of the situation. At this, Mark burst into laughter again. "Oh, I wish I could have been there to see it. I bet they were just as confused as you. They've impounded $29.99 worth of fake gemstones." I couldn't help it. Despite everything, a small smile crept onto my face. "They're going to think I'm insane." Mark's tone softened, and he spoke with a touch of kindness. "They're not going to think you're insane. They'll think you're thorough and careful. Honestly, they'll probably just think you're a really good citizen. The weight in my chest lifted slightly, but I still felt guilty. Mark? I asked, my voice quieter now. Yeah, babe? He replied. I'm sorry I didn't trust you, I said, the words feeling heavier than I had expected. I knew I should have trusted him, should have asked questions before jumping to conclusions, but I hadn't, and now I was paying the price with a bruised ego. He paused for a moment before speaking, his voice warm and reassuring. Hey, you did. Nothing wrong. I probably should have just told you what it was instead of being all mysterious about it. I can see how that would make you worried. He paused again, then added with a grin. But think of it this way. You'll have the best audition story of anyone in the theater group. I chuckled, the weight of the situation starting to ease. Yeah, I guess you're right. I definitely have a story to tell now. The next morning, the police returned the evidence. Officer Chen handed me the box with a barely suppressed smile on his face, as though he found the whole situation just as amusing as I did now. Definitely not stolen goods, ma'am, he said with a hint of humor. Unless someone's robbing craft stores. I took the box, feeling my face burn as I tried to explain everything to him. I feel ridiculous, I admitted, still embarrassed by the whole mess. Don't feel bad, Officer Chen said with a kind smile. We get calls like this more often than you'd think. Better safe than sorry, right? His voice was warm and understanding, and it made me feel a little better about the whole ordeal. Thank you for being so understanding, I said, my voice full of appreciation. He nodded as he turned to leave, then paused at the door. By the way, he added, his tone light, good luck with the audition. That Harper character sounds interesting. I nodded gratefully, still feeling a bit flustered, and watched as he left. The whole situation had been a whirlwind, and though I felt embarrassed, there was a sense of relief in knowing that everything was just a misunderstanding. When Mark finally came home the next day, I was waiting for him, sitting on the couch, with the box dramatically placed on the coffee table in front of me. It almost felt like I was making a show of it, trying to emphasize the absurdity of what had happened. But in truth, I just needed him to see the ridiculousness of it all. Mark walked in, his face lighting up when he saw me, and then his eyes dropped to the box. So, he said, smirking slightly, this is what all the drama was about, huh? He leaned down and picked up the box, his fingers tracing over the smooth cardboard. I gotta say, you really went all in on this one, huh? I sighed, smiling ruefully. Yeah, I guess you could say I really committed to the role. Mark sat beside me, his expression softening as he looked at me. You did what you thought was right, and that's all that matters. I probably should have told you sooner about the necklace, but I just wanted to surprise you. I'm sorry for keeping it a secret. I nodded, feeling grateful for his understanding. I should have asked you about it. I was just so caught up in my own head. He wrapped an arm around me, pulling me close. It's okay. At least we've got a great story to tell, right? And who knows? Maybe you'll nail that audition with your new thorough reputation. I laughed, shaking my head. If nothing else, at least I've got a great story for the theater group. Mark grinned, squeezing me tighter. Exactly. And next time, I promise, no more surprise boxes. We both laughed, the tension finally gone, replaced by the comforting feeling of knowing that no matter how bizarre the situation had gotten, we were in this together. Welcome home, I said, trying my best to keep a straight face, but the corners of my mouth kept twitching. Your stolen goods have been safely returned by law enforcement. Mark stopped in the doorway, his suitcase still in his hand, and raised an eyebrow, clearly not sure whether I was serious or joking. Then, without saying a word, he dropped his suitcase and opened his arms. I couldn't hold it in anymore. I walked into his embrace, inhaling the familiar scent of his cologne, something that always seemed to calm me. So, he said, grinning as he held me close, should I be worried about leaving any props around you in the future? Fake blood? Rubber knives? Stage poison? I pulled back just enough to look at him, my eyes narrowing playfully. You're never going to let me live this down, are you? Not a chance, he said, squeezing my hand gently. This story is going to be legendary. He had the same teasing glint in his eye that I knew so well, the one that always made me smile, even in the most awkward of situations. I was ready to believe you were leading some kind of diamond heist double life, I admitted, shaking my head at the absurdity of it all. Mark laughed at that. Me? The guy who color codes the spice rack? He tilted his head, pretending to be surprised. Criminal masterminds are often very organized, I pointed out, my voice dripping with mock seriousness. He reached over and opened the box, the infamous necklace still inside. Mark pulled it out, dangling it in front of me with a mischievous grin. Still want to audition? He asked. Despite your brush with the law over theatrical accessories, I took the necklace from him and, with all the drama I could muster, draped it around my neck. I think I've proven I've got a flair for the dramatic, don't you think? I said, giving him a teasing smile. Mark laughed. Without a doubt, Harper the jewel thief has nothing on Regina the prop detective. It was hard to stay mad or embarrassed when he made everything seem so ridiculous and lighthearted. Despite the chaos, I couldn't help but feel a little proud of myself for taking charge and following through on what I thought was the right thing to do, even if it ended up being a comedy of errors. 2 weeks later, I not only auditioned for the play, but actually landed the role. The villain, of course. I'd always joked about my evil laugh in private, But now I had a legitimate reason to perfect it. And yes, that infamous necklace made its grand stage appearance, sparkling under the theater lights in all its tacky, glitter glue glory. Every time the audience saw it, I couldn't help but smile to myself, thinking about the chaos it had caused just a few weeks earlier. Now whenever anyone asks Mark about how I got into acting, he jumps right in with a grin and says, "Tell them about your first role in law enforcement." I always roll my eyes, but then reply with a laugh, "Next time you want to surprise me with an audition, maybe label the box, 'Fake Jewelry, do not panic' first." Looking back, I realized that love is about grand gestures and romance, yes. But sometimes it's also about the little, unexpected moments where you trust each other and laugh at yourself when you accidentally report your husband to the police over craft store diamonds. I've learned that the strongest relationships aren't the ones without misunderstandings. They're the ones where you can look back at your mistakes, your moments of doubt, and find the humor in them together. No relationship is perfect, but it's the mistakes, the misunderstandings, and the ability to find joy even in the mess that makes them strong. As for that necklace, it now sits in a glass case, the sparkling, glittery reminder of how not all that shimmers is criminal evidence. It's a symbol of how sometimes life doesn't go according to script, and how the best stories often come from the moments you least expect. That necklace, absurd as it was, has become a quirky keepsake of one of the most memorable, laughable moments of our lives, a moment that no matter how embarrassing at the time, will always make us smile when we think back on it.